effective advocacy and action. The American Legion has always paved the way forward. Since your founding after World War I, generations of veterans have looked out for each other in an unbreakable chain of support. Veterans of every war lifting up and fighting for veterans of the next. Thank you for making a difference for America. Today and on all days, we recognize America's service members and veterans and their families. When you heard the call to action, you stepped forward, serving with honor, whether on the battlefields of Europe, the mountains of Korea, the jungles of Vietnam, the deserts of Iraq and Afghanistan, or beyond. Let us especially acknowledge our World War II veterans as we prepare to mark the 75th anniversary of the invasion of Normandy. I just want to tell you this story. On the 70th anniversary of the invasion of Normandy, I had the privilege of being part of a CODEL to go there and to spend time with our veterans, obviously to be part of the observance and the festivities, but mostly to listen and spend time with the veterans as a couple of days unfolded. So in the course of my conversations and listening to the veterans and their families, I said, my uncle died at the Battle of the Bulge. Now I'm talking to these veterans who are like late 80s, 70 years. Some of them were teenagers at the invasion of Normandy. And what they said, just I'll never forget it. I said, your uncle died at the Battle of the Bulge? Oh yeah, we went there next. Really? I mean, of course it was several months later, but on the path. At the invasion of Normandy, you think that would be contribution enough. Yes, we went there next. So the courage goes beyond just Normandy. It goes for that whole World War II. We're going to have a delegation going this year, which I'm proud to be a speaker for the 75th anniversary of the invasion of Normandy. That will be, as you know, the date in June. But it is, again, probably, it will be a spectacular occasion where we can once again pay tribute to the veterans, and that's the purpose of it all, and their families. I'll see you there, Commander. This year we mark, and we will have a very strong bipartisan, bicameral House and Senate, Democrats and Republicans, going in unity in support of our vets. This year we mark another monument in history, the 70th anniversary of NATO, which is the foundation of peace and security in the world. A week ago, I had the honor of leading a congressional delegation to the Munich Security Conference. Listen, we had 10% of the Congress at this Munich Security Conference. 10%, over 50 members, House and Senate, Democrats and Republicans. It was a very clear message. We were very welcome there. It was a very clear message of our support for NATO, for the European Union, for the transatlantic relationship, for our need to strengthen the institution as we share responsibilities and burdens, but in recognition of all that has gone before. We had the privilege of meeting with Supreme Allied Commander General Curtis Scaparrotti and Ambassador Phil Rieger. Our delegation discussed the challenges and the opportunities facing our relationship with individual nations within NATO. But we wanted the message to be very clear. We understand that multilateralism is important, that we all have to do our fair share, but that we respect the contribution that all nations make to that. They were delighted to see us because they were getting a different kind of message. But you would have been very proud to see Republicans, Democrats, House, and Senate. Remind you, the Senate majority is Republicans, so the Republicans were chairs of the committee. And on our side, the chairs of the committee were Democrats, all united in one clear message. We are reassured our NATO allies of our long-term commitment to the alliance advancing global security, stability, and peace. Our veterans, in a bipartisan way, again, we work together, recognizing our veterans deserve a government that will safeguard their sacrifices that generations of heroes, and you're all heroes, have made to advance global peace. And you deserve a government that respects your service by ensuring that all who have donned the uniform, that you get your paycheck on time and benefits on time and in full. It is absolutely unacceptable that Coast Guardsmen and federal workers, 1/3 of whom are veterans, 1/3 of federal workers are veterans, are denied their paychecks for more than a month because of the shutdown. You know what that means? We heard from the Veteran Service Organization, from veterans individually. If you don't get your paycheck on time, you can't pay your bills on time. That financial insecurity is not only harmful to the family, it's harmful to your credit rating. And your credit rating is important to your security clearance. And many people's jobs depend on their security clearance. That's one of the assets, the value adds that our veterans bring, some of them bring to their jobs. So this not getting their paychecks, paying their bills on time, credit rating impact, and they were fearful that if it went on too much longer, they could lose their security clearance. That was at risk in a shutdown as well. Totally unacceptable. We're grateful to the Legion, to you all. You were just great. You came to the rescue, as you always do, for bipartisan advocacy to shine a light on the impacts and to end the shutdown. And thank you for what you did for our Coast Guardsmen, because they were only force in our military, among our military forces who are not under the Department of Defense, which was not part of the shutdown, but as part of another branch of government, which was part of it. Unfortunately, after the shutdown, the president decided to declare an emergency proclamation that would further undermine the well-being of our men and women in uniform and our military families. And here's how. This declaration steals billions of dollars from urgently needed military construction projects, potentially targeting barracks, family housing, child care centers, and schools. This is wrong. We talk a great deal about military readiness, but we know that military readiness is affected by family military readiness as well. And so we cannot let this proceed, because these are appropriations that have been passed by the Congress in a bipartisan way, signed into law by the President of the United States. Under the Constitution, the power of the purse goes to the House, House and the Senate, the Congress of the United States, and we cannot have a perceived emergency. If there's an emergency, we're all there. There is a situation at the border which was addressed in a bipartisan way. House and Senate, Democrats and Republicans came together and passed a bill, sent it to the President to address the concerns at the border, and border security is a major responsibility that we have. But we take an oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, to uphold the Constitution, and to usurp the power of one branch of government for what? A perceived emergency. As I say, if it were truly an emergency, we'd all be there with the President of the United States. Our founders had great vision. They did not want a king. They put forth a constitution, the heart and soul of which is the separation of powers, check and co-equal branches of government, a check and balance on each other. This action violates that oath of office. So I have confidence that our colleagues will hold true to the oath that they take to protect the Constitution and, again, save us from the consequences of any president, Democratic or Republican, now or into the future, of raiding the appropriations that we put there in the Department of Defense and in our military construction budget for our men and women in uniform, for their readiness, but also for the security of their families, which, by the way, have needs. So this is nothing extra. We need that money to go where it is designated. So we will be having that debate on the floor of the House today, and I wanted to bring you up to date on it because it has consequences. It's so sad, but it is the situation that we're in. to the head of the House on a bipartisan basis, the Senate on a bipartisan, I can only speak for the House, will pass a resolution to terminate the declaration and protect our servicemen and women and our military families. This issue is not about politics, it's not about partisanship, it's about patriotism. It's about honoring our oaths of office to protect and defend. And in protecting and defend the Constitution, protect and defend the prerogative of Article 1, first branch of government, following the beautiful preamble to the Constitution. It states our purpose as a nation. Article 1, the legislative branch, as I mentioned. And spelled out in the text of the Constitution, the power of the purse. Our Republican friends in the past have opposed any initiative, not even that it happened, but in anticipation of it, have stated in their better way a few years ago that the president must honor the Congress. That was their own initiative. Let's hope that they will do so today. So again, support for our veterans is bipartisan. I can't say it enough, and we strive to make it so, to resolve differences, listening to you, what your priorities are, how we can go forward in a positive way. This Congress, on a bipartisan and bicameral basis, is honored to fight for veterans and defend your health care and benefits, as well as the readiness of our men and women in uniform. Just as the military leaves no soldier on the battlefield behind, when you come home, we leave no veteran behind. That is our pledge. We all repeat it over and over. That means also, for the past 15 years, I've been proud, as the commander mentioned, to host the VSO's roundtables with the American Legion front and center. We have come to listen to the voices and to deliver on promises, and those priorities have become law and have made a difference, and we thank you for keeping us on the course of priorities for veterans, not what we think is right, but what you think is right. Last year, reflecting on the voices of veterans, the Congress took a step to modernize VA by passing the Bipartisan VA Mission Act. We're pleased that this bill rightly expands caregiver benefits to all eras, replaces the flawed Veterans Choice Program, and consolidates the many community care initiatives. Yet this bill is far from perfect. Without a sustainable source of funding, this bill could trigger budget cuts critical to VA initiatives, including groundbreaking research and mental health care. Under Chairman Mark Tucano, the U.S. House Veterans Affairs Committee is committed to strong, responsible oversight to ensure that the bill is implemented in a way that respects the voices and prevents VA funding cuts. We are committed to strengthening the four walls of the VA and fighting privatization efforts. We must fight privatization efforts. Sometimes they're disguised. Sometimes they come in disguise, but we all have to recognize the ramification of any proposal. Give it its fair shot. Is it in furtherance of strengthening our ability to honor our responsibilities to our veterans? We are committed to not only fighting for veterans' benefits and health care, but also fighting for your economic opportunities and financial security. 75 years ago, Congress passed the GI Bill into law. I saw coming in the signing by Franklin Roosevelt and what he said at the time of that signing, and it is a commitment that we continue to honor. But that bill was passed because of the initiatives of the American Legion and veterans of the previous war, knowing how they had been not favorably impacted, but wanting the best for the veterans who would come. So thank you, American Legion, for making that so. And it asserted the right of every veteran to pursue a quality, affordable education that puts them on the path to good-paying, meaningful jobs. 10 years ago, the House Democrats built on that bedrock by passing the post-9/11 GI Bill, restoring the promise of a full 4-year college education to over 1.9 million Iraq and Afghanistan veterans and their families. It was interesting at the time because people said, well, if you're going to give people an opportunity for a college education, you're going to affect re-ups, people renewing. So we said, okay, we'll do it for the person in the military or their family member. And then a couple of years later, we had to also expand the bill because if you died in action, you lost the benefit for your family. So we had to then redo it to say that the benefit is not lost if the supreme sacrifice is made. It makes sense, right? But that's, again, the input that we received from the U.S. to the impact and how it directly relates to lives of our veterans' families. 1.9 million Iraq and Afghan veterans and their families. Last year, we expanded these protections, improving benefits, closing eligibility gaps, and increasing opportunity for reservists, guardsmen, Purple Heart recipients, again, surviving spouses and dependents. We're proud to formally name the Forever GI Bill after former Legion National Commander Harry Colmurray, who was mentioned earlier, but I wanted to further acknowledge that because it was the recognition that we all know, but we wanted everybody to know, who hand-wrote the original GI Bill. Does that give you chills? Does that just fill you with so much pride? He hand-wrote the original GI Bill of the American Legion National Commander. The House will continue to be vigilant in our oversight of this legislation and continue to call on the VA to make veterans, dependents, and their families whole again without delaying, for example, housing, delayed housing stipends. We will fight efforts to undermine accountability in the higher education and eliminate initiatives like the public service loan forgiveness. There are attempts to eliminate that. We will fight. And we will stand firm against any efforts to weaken and eliminate protections for students, including veterans and service members, against predatory institutions and lending. We are committed to building a future in our country worthy of the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform. We always say we have responsibility to our founders, their vision, the aspirations of our children, and just among those two, a third priority. Can put it first. Honor the sacrifice, worthy of the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform. That means when they come home, that we look after them, but also building an economy and a society in which their talents and leadership skills are recognized to the fullest extent. The House is honored to fight for our heroes in uniform, our veterans and their families, and caregivers. And in caregivers, I thank you for mentioning that, and housing and all the other concerns that were mentioned earlier. I had the privilege of serving as, I still do, as co-chair of the task force established by Elizabeth Dole, former secretary, former senator, angel to our, what we call hidden heroes, our caregivers of our veterans when they come home. I was co-chair with Senator McCain, who was the chair on the Senate side. Rest his soul, what a beautiful person that our country continues to respect and honor and will for a long time. But coming back when we were in the Munich conference, an award was given in his honor because his commitment to our national security and to our men and women in uniform and our caregivers is monumental. But I was pleased to be asked by Elizabeth Dole to co-chair that committee and continue to work together, the hidden heroes of the caregivers and families for meeting the needs of our veterans, some of our veterans when they come home. Because your service, as President Eisenhower said, reminds our fellow citizens why they sleep soundly at night. But Congress cannot do our inside maneuvering without your outside mobilization. We need you to join the fight, as you have, but recognize you're joining the fight to raise your voices, defend your rights, and advocate for your needs. Inside maneuvering, that's what we're responsible to do. Outside mobilization makes it all work. President President Lincoln said, public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. So know your power. I think you do. Certainly the American Legion does, as I have observed over the years. And again, your presence here, this conference, the hearings that you will have, the hearing that you will have in a few days, people listen, care about what you say, act upon your words, but then you have to take it home to make sure that the drumbeat continues there. Because anything, as Lincoln said, is possible with public sentiment. And so we look forward to working with you. I thank you for your service and your leadership, and I consider it a very high honor to be able to share a few thoughts with you this morning. I thank you on behalf of the Congress of the United States and pledge to you that in the most transparent, bipartisan, and unifying way, we have you as a top priority as we go forward. Thank you for the American Legion.
Thank you, Speaker Pelosi, for being with us this morning. Service members, veterans,